from Teaching English, part of the British Council. In today's live stream, we're going to be telling you all about our professional development course for teachers. Climate Action in Language Education. We're about to start the third module, and with us we have a special guest, the course writer, who will be telling us a little bit about it. Do stay tuned. My name is Marcus James. I'm from the social media team. Let's go and meet Dan, who is standing by. Hi, Dan. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you very much. Excuse me, I'll just get myself sorted. Thank you very much for having me talk on the Facebook Live.
Well, we are very pleased to have you with us. Teachers watching, if you do have any questions or comments for Dan or related to our topic of discussion today, do pop them in the chat. We are going to be talking specifically about the course module that Dan has written. What is the title of it? It has sustainability there somewhere, doesn't it?
That's right. Well, Climate Action in Language Education is the name of the course. There are so far 3,000 people enrolled or have enrolled over the last few weeks on modules 1 and 2. And module 3 is just about to come out now. I think, let me just check. It's the 16th to the 30th of June. So a few more days, all 3 modules will be running. So you could do it all together at the same time. They're free and you get a certificate for completing them. And I think there's something like 3,000 teachers from 100 different countries. And so it's all very exciting and good. And it's called Climate Action in Language Education.
Oh, fantastic. So we are being joined by teachers from all around the world. This is, of course, a professional development course for teachers, and climate action is a global it's a problem, isn't it? Not climate. Start again. Climate action is not the problem. Climate change.
Crisis.
The climate crisis.
The climate crisis.
That's right.
Absolutely, so, it's the problem. It's the problem. And so, yeah, this course is in answer to some feedback that we've had in recent weeks from a very large survey that the British Council did, asking teachers and students, particularly teenagers and teachers, what they thought of the climate emergency and language teaching's role in that. And it was a resounding, very clear message that students want more. Students feel that it's missing from the course and they want more of it. And something like 75, like 3/4 of all the students asked were saying they wanted more. And the teachers were, broadly speaking, agreeing. But more importantly, even more, something like 80% of the teachers said they didn't feel they had the training necessary to teach sustainability issues in the classroom. So that's where this course steps in. It's a first step. Of course, it's a very, this is a total of 9 hours. Each module is 3 units of 1 hour, and there are 3 modules. So 9 hours in total. That's about as long as it would take you to do in total. And as with a lot of the British Council teacher development courses, then you go on to the Facebook group, and there's moderated conversations, discussions going there. And so it's a very solid first step, I think, if you are looking to develop yourself and your teaching skills in this area of climate action, sustainability studies, and all the rest of it.
That's right. So teachers watching, we do have previous videos with Christiana Ossan, who was the module writer for the first unit on introducing the environmental issues into your teaching. Module 2, we spoke to Owain Llewellyn quite recently, about 2-3 weeks ago, and he was talking about sustainability as well. What was the difference?
So Christiana in module 1 is looking very much at the starting to integrate sustainability issues into your everyday classrooms. Owen takes that a step further with Module 2, and it's really his specialist area. He is encouraging people to make their own lessons. So thinking about not just a little touch here and there, but thinking about actual lessons devoted to different issues, whether it's to do with global warming, to do with plastic, to do with water usage, to do with fashion. And the idea there very much that the environment and the climate crisis is affecting or is affected by pretty much anything we talk about. If you think about a typical course book and all the different units, you've got your sport, travel, food, etc. There are very important angles in all of those topic areas where the environment comes in, where we can think about our carbon footprint or what society can do to reduce their impact on the environment. And then my unit is my module, is sort of taking it the next stage, which is outside of the classroom. So we're thinking in two areas particularly. First of all, in the idea of projects. So here we've taken very much the idea of what's the word? Service learning. Service learning is a sort of form of learning where students go out into the community and serve their community in some way. Now that could be a cleanup operation. It could be raising awareness of an issue. Right here at the moment, for example, I'm part of a group that is looking after a little seabird that nests on the beach. I'm down in the south of Spain, and there's lots of people on the beach now. And we need to make sure everyone is aware that the back of the beach is not for humans. The back of the beach is for nesting birds right now. And so we're going into schools and talking to schools, and then they're spreading it, they're taking that out into the streets, talking to their families and things like that. So it's about the community, whether that community is the classroom itself or the local school, the wider community of the school, or the local town or local area. So that's one area of kind of outside the classroom. And the other area is for the teachers themselves. And that's about where we go from here. After this course, how do you keep developing professionally in sustainability? How do you keep doing that? So those are the two main thrusts of the last module.
That's very interesting. Actually, thank you for clearing that up. I was showing some of the course description on the screen as you were doing that. So what we can see here from, as you mentioned, the module, each module is 1 hour. So there are 3 modules and 3 units in each module. The one that Dan is talking about is called Making Sustainability a Part of Your Learners' Lives. So the first unit we can see there, you've got the aim of it to identify a climate action to take. And could you give us an example, the types of projects that the teachers might be developing as part of this module, or part of Unit 2 and then Unit 3?
Well, we were very concerned to ensure that examples of projects in the course were real projects, that they were realistic. And so there's a big section of Unit 1 which is looking at 6 projects. We did a call out to people on the ELT footprint group and in other areas. We also spoke to a lady called Linda Ruas, who is heavily involved in the global issues SIG in IATEFL, and through her work, raising awareness of action that's being taken in Africa and other parts of the world, we found some teachers who are doing this already, who are paving the way. So, for example, we've got a school in Brazil where the students not only did they clean up the local beach, but they also went to a recycling centre and learnt about that and talking to people who worked in recycling. And they created art out of the recycled objects that they found. Similarly, there's a beach cleanup by a guy called Patrick Jackson. Patrick has set up a fantastic organization called Pick-a Pals, and it's for young children, and it's encouraging them to pick up the rubbish in their area. And he's got some wonderful ideas about encouraging young people to pick up litter and to look after the world around them. Then we've got tree planting in Togo. We've got a recycling projects in a school in Libya. We've got in Argentina, we've got a vegetable garden where the students and the teachers of a class created a vegetable garden at the back of the school. And no, sorry, I'm wrong. It was a composter. I think they've got a vegetable garden as well. But they're learning about composting, and then they've got everyone else coming in from other classes and talking about it and learning how composting works. So real examples which we use on the course to encourage teachers, to encourage people like you, whoever's listening, whoever's interested, to do something like this in their classes with their students.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much for that. We had a question actually from Khadija. How can we do these things? As you mentioned, they sound quite green, or at least involving the environment outside of our class. How can we do that while we have a class that should be inside the classroom?
Okay, so this is, there are certain assumptions being made here. First of all, when we talk about community projects, we have to identify community. And one of the first things we do in this course is identify what communities you're talking about. The classroom itself is a community. And there are lots and lots of things you can do within the classroom to encourage your students to live more sustainable lives. And I have to say the other way around as well, because very often, you may have noticed in the last couple of years, but it's really younger people who are leading the way with environmental action, with climate action. And so I think it's not actually a question of the teacher saying, right, this is the project, this is what we're going to do, but facilitating students, giving students the space to be able to do that. If you're giving your students homework, then your studies and the remit of the classroom is not limited to the classroom. And the same can be said of project work. If you can imagine, a good example is a project I heard where students took home small plants and grew them at home. So encouraging students to start growing things. So it starts, the seed is sown, if you like, quite literally in the classroom, but then the project kind of spills out of the class and into the students' families, into their lives, into people that know them outside of school. So there are lots of different ways, and a few of those are presented on the course. So it's Khadija, thank you very much for your question.
Excellent. That's very, very practical, interesting, and it serves the greater purpose of helping the environment at the end of the day. So we've got a question here I'd like to sort of pick up. It's not if we can sort of make it about climate action, if we sort of take the idea of self-learning and independent learning. Obviously, it's a good idea. How can we sort of encourage that, the learning about the environment, what's happening in the world, but also learning to communicate, which language is about communication?
So, I mean, that's a very good question, Salwa, and a very long answer. And I'm not going to attempt to teach it. I mean, I've written a book about sort of coaching, the idea of teachers encouraging students to do more independent learning, to do more practice of English. And it's a very, very involved question about you're asking about autonomy. In the case of climate action, I think that last example about sort of planting seeds and sending them to someone's home. There's an issue there, but I think you're more interested in the communication. So one of the things I think is going to be very noticeable, it's already very noticeable to those who are looking, is the importance, the primacy of English in activism. There was an article recently in EL Gazette. It was actually about the troubles in Myanmar, but it was picking up on the fact that although only 5% of people in Myanmar speak English, the vast majority of the posters, the protest posters that and banners that people were using was all in English. And so they realized, they made the point, which I think we all know anyway, which is English is the language of protest. It's the language of activism. And when we are dealing with such a global issue, we need a common language, and English is that common language. And so anything you do online is likely to be perhaps multiplied by using English. So, for example, you could you could sign a petition in your own language, and it would be a petition for perhaps a few 100,000 people or a few million people. But if you're signing a petition in a global organization in English, it's part of a much, much bigger picture. Whether that's, or you could be using your English to write on social media, or using it for artwork, using it for literature, poetry, for essays, writing, all of that kind of thing. So that's where the communication comes in. There's also a real possibility with this course and with the follow-up Facebook group that teachers will be, and I think this has already started, but the teachers can get together. So you could have a teacher in Kenya and a teacher in Paraguay, two different classes doing similar projects and comparing notes across using the kind of technology that we're using now in order to share. And so, of course, then English is going to be the language of shared communication. And I think so much of awareness is about understanding the global nature, the fact that the actions I take in my little world affect people on the other side of the planet, whether it's to do with consumerism or water usage or simple energy use. So I think there's a real sense of togetherness with this project, which we could exploit as language teachers to get our students communicating. And I really, really urge teachers doing this to take that. And that's one of the reasons the British Council exists, is that idea of cultural bonds across nations.
Exactly. Mina, jumping into sort of following on from that question we had earlier from Salwa. She asked her sixth graders to plant a sapling and then to record audio, expressing how they feel as they kind of go along. So even if you are working independently, you can always communicate. I talk to myself all the time.
Yeah, me too.
Teachers joining us, if you are just coming across this live stream, thank you for spending time. We are talking about climate action in language education. We have with us Dan Barber, who has written the third of our three modules. Now, he mentioned this a little bit earlier, but now all three of these modules are now open. So if you haven't done module 1 or module 2, you can. Do you have to do module 1 and then module 2 and then module 3, Dan?
No, you don't have to. I think there are certain advantages to doing it in that order. I know that Christiana in module 1 spends a little bit of time teaching the key vocabulary, which I'm assuming you all know by module 3. But if you've perhaps got a more proficient English, then module 3 is probably doable. And they do have different purposes. As I said, module 1 is very much about generally integrating sustainability into your classes. Number 2 is about lesson planning. and with the theme of environmental issues. And module 3 is much more about outside the class and continuing professional development for you, the teacher. So they are separate and they are freestanding. But I would highly recommend you see it all the way through. And as I said before, they are all running between June the 16th, which is next week, and June the 30th. So if you wanted to do all 3 at the same time, you can.
Yes, you can do them simultaneously. I'm not sure. Well, I don't know. It depends on how good you are at learning 3 things at the same time. We expect that of our learners.
I know. I mean, in series, but you could, if you wanted to do it intensively, you could sort of spend a couple of days on module 1, a couple of days on module 2, and so on.
That's right. And Dan did mention that the Facebook group that we have, especially for teachers who are on the course. If you are on Facebook, it's a stupid question. Of course, you're on Facebook. Do a search for the Language for Resilience Practitioners Facebook group. We'll put a link in the chat, or Claire will help us out with a link in the chat below. Dan, just going to draw up a couple of comments we've had here.
Sure.
All right, so this one from Milton. I'll bring that up on screen. I'm not sure if you can see that. I'll try and read it out. Right, so Milton is from Venezuela, and as part of a program or educational program with students there, they've integrated lots of different topics, such as conservation of the planet, the recycling process, and the reuse of materials to, work into our sort of daily life.
Sounds brilliant.
It does.
Like he's already doing it, isn't he? He's already well on the way to being a sort of climate activist within the classroom, and that's wonderful.
Exactly. I mean, it doesn't matter what age the learners, there is always something we can do, whether it's
absolutely.
Exactly. So in terms of teachers who would benefit most from this course, we're talking primary school teachers, secondary school teachers, sort of higher education, preschool.
Specifically young learners and teenagers, so kind of school age teaching. But I don't think there's any reason why the principals, there's no difference with the principals with adults, higher education at all. The examples have come from mostly primary and secondary school. So there's a sort of immediate relevance there. But no, I think there's absolutely no reason to limit it. I think any teacher who's aware, as I was and still am, aware of how much the climate, if you're dealing with the climate emergency in your own private life, why shouldn't you also be dealing with it in your professional life? We have to, this is a massive challenge that we have as a planet, and we all have our role to play. And we can do what we do at home. I'm sure many people listening are recycling, are trying to cut down on the amount of flights they take, or car journeys they make, or meat they eat, or whatever. But above and beyond that, there's also everything you do at work. And in Unit 1 of my module, we look at different, not just different communities where we can act, but different levels at which we can act. So climate action is typically thought about as something you do yourself, like recycling or cycling to work or whatever, or something right at the top, sort of political marches and petitions and voting and boycotting products and things like that, sort of very public, at the kind of aimed at the multinational companies or at the government. So you've got these two extremes, and then, but in the middle, there are some really important levels where actually the problem with these two levels is that we feel like we have very little influence. Me on my own recycling, I just feel like it's, it's just a drop in the ocean. And similarly, at this very high level, okay, there are 6 million signatures already on this petition. What's an extra one going to matter? You know, this feeling of insignificance. But I'm not insignificant in my classroom. I'm not insignificant in my school. I'm not even insignificant within the profession, within my professional group. I certainly have a voice. I can share you know, I can write a tweet or post something or write a blog post about something I did with my students, and other people can read it and be inspired by it. So I think that middle section, that those communities where we're big fish in small ponds, or we're certainly noticeable fish in small ponds, we can make a difference there because we can influence the people around us. So I think that's why I feel it's a really key area that we approach the climate crisis from a professional point of view. Things we can do in our classrooms, in our schools, and in the wider community.
Absolutely. So just having a look at the sort of comments in the chat there. Teachers watching, if what we have talked about so far, we're not done yet, does sound of interest, there is a link in the description where you can find more information about all 3 modules and details on how to register. If you want to come back later, just head over to Teaching English website. That's teachingenglish.org/training, and you'll find all the information there. The courses, or the course made up of 3 modules, is available from the 16th to the 30th, so the last 2 weeks of this month. We have lots of people watching from all around the world: Sudan, Peru, Bhutan, Malaysia. I mean, lots of these countries. I pretty much know it is very late at night. Thank you so much for watching. We've got a comment here, just supporting pretty much what we are talking about. Protecting the environment to teach. Sorry. Do you have some good support? So one thing that kind of ties in with the previous question, about the things that we do, how can we, this age-old question, how can we make our learners enjoy taking action when it comes to climate?
I think action is the enjoyable bit. It's a little bit like the language classroom. There's a sort of traditional old style of teacher lectures, chalk and talk, very boring for any learner because they're not acting. And so I think this final module, which looks at, well, all of the modules look at lesson planning from the point of view of student-centeredness. And what that really means is that students are actually doing stuff. Students are not just doing the things that the teachers tell them to do. They're not just picking up the rubbish because it's a project that the teacher has dictated that they do. That's not the approach. This is about this is the beginning of a process that a teacher opens the door of possibility and says, we all know that there's this terrible crisis going on. What are we going to do about it? Here are some ideas. What do you think? And that question, what do you think, and giving students the chance to say, well, I think what's really important for me is, waste, because I live near a place where people tip and it's really smelly. And, I know a lot of people, there's all this waste and we want to know where it's come from. Why isn't it being recycled? La, 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 la. So the germ of an idea comes from a problem that students, perhaps teachers notice, but students share. Students want to help, and getting involved, getting your hands dirty in that way, I think is in itself motivating. If anyone has ever done a beach cleanup, for example, the satisfaction that you have, sort of having, first of all, meeting lots of people, there's a community, and there's the idea of spreading the word and telling people about what you're doing and why you're doing it. I think people respond to action. People respond to other people doing things rather than just talking about them.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a comment here from Richard. Talks about doing some sort of cleanup of their local environment, and once you do that as a community, as a class, then you are more engaged in that topic, even if the examples in the book don't directly relate to maybe your sort of cleanup of the local park, for example. But that is one way to, we do it all the time. We try to stimulate that interest with our learners, don't we? And doing things together does help also with that sort of sense.
And I know that one thing that Owen stressed very much was the idea of the local being really key. A lot of our materials are written for the global market, so they're it's my job as the books I've got behind me are very good examples of that. But what's really key is trying to find the local relevance, the personal relevance to big issues. So one key is to find out those local issues. So if it's about, if you're doing a lesson on freshwater scarcity, finding the local angle, whether it's to do with a polluted lake or to do with the fact that water is very expensive and why that is, or whatever, is a really important key way of getting their interest, because of course it's interesting. It's impacting on them and their lives and their environments.
Absolutely. Wow, 30 minutes have absolutely flown by. Dan, thank you so much for helping us out with a little bit more information about the upcoming module.
Thank you very much.
Teachers watching, there is a link in the description of this video where you can find out more and register. Claire will also be sending out some links, or sending out one link ideally, to the Facebook group, where you can also get support from other teachers who are kind of in the same boat, so to speak. They're on the course, and we're sort of helping each other out there. Just to reiterate, there are 3 modules in total. Let's see if we can get them up, the graphics. So the one that Dan has written is module 3. So module 1 and module 2 will be open at the same time from the 16th to the 30th of June. So you've got 2 weeks to complete those. If you complete each module and you score 70% or more in the online activities, there are certificates of completion that you'll be able to download. So there is one for each of the modules. So if you do complete all 3, wow, that is 3 certificates that you can download. Do check out the description for more information about exactly what that entails. And register now. This is a fantastic professional development opportunity, and it's all free. So thank you, Dan, for helping us with this. And of course, we will see you on the course, won't we?
Thank you very much, Marcus. Yes, I'm looking forward to dropping in and visiting.
Bye-bye.
Bye.